I also wanted to make sure that I reviewed fractions with you all, like we did in class. A fraction has two parts. It has a numerator, which is the number on the top, and it has a denominator, which is the number on the bottom. And I like to remember that denominator is on the bottom because D is like down. It's down denominator. So in the fraction, if we have the fraction 1/4, we talked about how that is the same as 2/8. Because if you had a pie and you had 1/4 of the pie right here, if we divide this pie into 8ths, you can see that 1/4 is the same as 2/8. So those are called equivalent fractions, fractions that are equal to each other. And the way you'll see this in your homework is it'll say expand 3/4 so that the denominator is 24. And all of that means is they want you to take the fraction 3/4 and turn it into a fraction that is equal to 3/4, but that has a denominator of 24. So in a sense, what that means is you'll go back to our pie. That means if they want to know if you have 3/4 of a pie, which would be this much, 3/4 of a pie, how many 24ths of the pie would you have? So that you would have to divide this circle into even more spots. So each one of these would be divided into another 6 spots, like this. And that would tell you, that would show a pie divided into 24 pieces. Be kind of small pieces, but we could do that. So if we did that, and you figured out how much of this 3/4 was actually 24ths, you would find out that there would be 18 of them. So 3/4 would be equal to 18/24. But it would be very tiring and not quite very, you wouldn't be able to be very exact if you had to draw a picture and divide it up. So there's a better way to find equivalent fractions. If we go back to the 3/4, and if it said to turn it into 24ths, we have to take a look and see what's going on. When you change a fraction into an equivalent fraction, you want to figure out what you multiply the denominator by, and then you can take that same number and multiply the numerator by it, and that will give you the answer that you're looking for. The reason why that works is as long as you have a fraction, and if you multiply or divide the numerator and the denominator by the same number, you will end up with an equivalent fraction. For example, if I take 2/4 and I multiply the denominator by 2 and the numerator by 2, I end up with the fraction 2 times 2 is 4, and 4 times 2 is 8. So I end up with something that looks like 2/4 equals 4/8. And you can see that those do equal each other. They're both equal also to a half. So as long as you multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same number, you'll end up with a fraction that is equal to the original one. So if they're asking you to find a fraction that equals 3/4 that has the denominator of 24, you need to figure out what 4 was multiplied by that gave the answer 24. Once you figure that out, you want to multiply the numerator by that same number, and that will give you your answer. So when you look down here, you can see that 4 times 6 equals 24. So the denominator was multiplied by 6. So that means we also have to multiply the numerator by 6. And when we do that, we get 3 times 6 is 18. So that's how you can figure out that 3/4 is the same as 18/24, just like we figured out up here when we actually took and divided the circle into that many pieces. So in your homework, you're going to be looking for equivalent fractions. So just remember to always multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same number in order to find the equivalent fraction. We can also do the opposite, where we divide the numerator and the bottom and the denominator by the same number. And that's called reducing our fraction. Reduce to the lowest terms. That means we're trying to figure out the smallest numerator and denominator that we can have that will make the fraction stay equal. That can also be called simplifying a fraction. You'll see it both in this book. So simplifying and reducing the fraction to the lowest terms are the same. So let's take a look at 30/45. This number can be reduced. We can do division to the top and to the bottom in order to get a number that equals this fraction. That would be a lowest terms. Before we do this one, I want to do one that's a little bit easier. If we see 2/4 and we want to reduce this to the lowest terms, we want to divide the numerator and the denominator by the same number in order to keep it equivalent. We're going to see that they both can be divided by 2. 2 divided by 2 equals 1. 4 divided by 2 equals 2. So this shows us that 2/4 is the same as 1/2. And like we showed this picture before, you can easily see that 2/4 is the same as 1/2 of a pie. But we don't want to always have to draw a picture of a pie. So we want to look at this number and figure out what number we can divide both the numerator and the denominator by in order to reduce this fraction. Since if we look at them and one ends in a 0 and one ends in a 5, that tells me that they both can be divided by 5. So we'll try that. As long as we divide the numerator by 5 and the denominator by 5, we will keep the fraction equivalent. So 30 divided by 5 is 6. 45 divided by 5 is 9. And that tells us that 30/45 is equal to 6/9. This is actually not in its lowest terms because there's still more numbers that these two can have that can be divided into both of these. So we're not done yet. There is another number that can go evenly into both the numerator and the denominator. You know what it is? If you look at it, it's a 3. We can divide 6 by 3 evenly and 9 by 3 evenly. As long as there's still another number that can go evenly into these two numbers and both of them, then we are not at the lowest terms yet. We have to keep going. 6 divided by 3 is 2, and 9 divided by 3 is 3. That equals 2/3. So 30/45 is the same as 6/9, which is also the same as 2/3. When we get to 2/3, we can see that there are no other numbers that can be divided into both the numerator and the denominator evenly. In fact, these are both prime numbers, so we can't divide those any further. So our answer for this problem would be 2/3. So in your book, if you had reduce 30/45 to the lowest terms, you would end up with the answer 2/3.